I was watching the first half of Daredevil season 2 thinking, why did I ever think this was less good? This is just as good, if not better than season 1. The introduction of the Punisher, his methodology, his ideology, the performance as Frank Castle from John Bernthal, that he's putting every ounce of the comic book Punisher into it. He's brutal, he's unforgiving, he's stoic, and he only speaks when he really feels like something needs to be said. And I think that what they did with the hallway fight scene in this season, the Daredevil hallway fight season, they won up to the last season, in my opinion.
The brightest part of the image is behind the subject, so you kind of almost just see a silhouette.
These punches are sick. The more I look at the fight closely, the more I think it might be my favorite fight of the 3 seasons. So those production elements, the sound design, the visual components really put you in Matt's shoes and makes this kind of palpable, sexual tension between them all the more strong and noticeable, because you can imagine that Matt is feeling everything at a heightened level.
Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Aaron.
We post new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on today's episode, we're talking about season 2 of Daredevil.
3, 2, 1, action!
All right, man. The countdown is ticking. We're getting closer and closer to Daredevil Born Again, which is the newest season of one of our favorite shows. Now, it is switching from the producers at Netflix who did the original 3 seasons, and it's going over to Disney here. And Disney has been known to kind of Disney-fy a lot of the properties that they take over. So we're hoping that we get a taste of what was in the original trilogy of TV seasons into this new one with maybe some, like, a new feel a little bit. They can put their own spin on it, but we want the tone to be the same. We want the characters, the actors to all be the same, which is a good sign. But to get prepared for this season coming out, we're going back through the Netflix's 3 seasons. Last week we talked about season 1. This week we're on season 2. Next week we're going to talk about season 5.
So get hype with us here as we go along. I'll give you the overarching categories we're going to go into here, but the idea is that you'll be able to listen to this, not only refresh your memory, but kind of refresh your excitement for the different seasons week to week with us. You can listen to episode 1 if you go back and look in our recent videos as it came out last week, where we talked about season 1 of Daredevil, and that one's really in depth. So we'll make this one a little bit shorter for you guys. Let us know in the comments which one you prefer. But we are going to make it so that you can reminisce and remember the stuff in Daredevil, but also we're going to talk about what we liked about the season, what makes the show great, just so that we can get the idea of whether we think Born Again is going to match up with that. And when Born Again comes out, we'll talk about that too. So we got a lot of Daredevil before us. So for today's episode, categories that we wrote down are going to include, starting with our overall reaction to this season of Daredevil, talking about how we felt about it in general, what we liked, what we didn't. Then we're going to talk about the ratings a little bit of the Netflix series season 2, our favorite or best moments of the show, then the production and cinematography of the show, following up with, maybe at the end we'll talk a little bit about our expectations for Born Again, how this season we think might compare.
Boom. So if you're listening and this is something that interests you, make sure you hit that subscription button and notification bell. We post every Monday and Thursday. Like we said, we did Daredevil season 1 last week. Next week, we're going on to season 3. So keep updated. We're talking about Invincible right now. We're talking about the different movies that are coming out, like Captain America, Brave New World. So bless you. So, I'm trying to speak here, man. Like, can you hold that till like after the episode? Another one? Oh my God.
I'm allergic to people who watch the show a lot know I'm allergic to when other people are talking that aren't me.
Yes, it's really annoying. It makes co-hosting a podcast really hard.
I just say great work on reminding people to like and subscribe. And I really like these pops that you have in front of you.
Thank you. Yes. All right, cool. So another one? Come on, man. Get it together.
I will try to refrain from it for you guys for the rest of the video. I'll do my best.
All right. So what was that first category you wanted to talk about? The overall thoughts of season 2.
Yeah, what did you think? Do you want to open up with your thoughts on season 2?
Yeah, so I think season 2 is maybe my least favorite of the 3.
I think that's fair.
However, there's a lot of cool moments, a lot of cool parts. We got the introduction of Punisher, which is one of the best castings with John Bernthal in the role to ever exist in both comic movie or show history, but then also just in general. Perfect actor for the perfect character. So
cooked like crazy.
It's really hard not to be excited for season 2. There's some pretty good fights. There's some amazing fights in season 2. A few that come out and stick in my mind is when the Punisher is in jail and he's ripping through all of those bad guys kind of in his own version of the hallway scene. That one has a little bit more cuts into it, so it's a little different than the Daredevil hallway scene we got in season 1, which I kind of like, kind of refreshing it, keeping it different. It was very bloody and gory, which does separate it from season 1's kind of hallway scene.
Yeah, Punisher also doesn't wear a mask, so it's harder to switch out the stunt double and do these neat little tricks that they do.
That's a good point.
So it makes it more fitting to have cuts.
Yeah, definitely. But I like how gruesome and brutal that is. And then what was another fight? Oh, the rooftop scene where Punisher and Daredevil are kind of going at it, and then Daredevil's tied up, and they're having that conversation back and forth on basically whether you should kill people or not. We talked a little bit in last week's episode if Daredevil actually kills or not. It's kind of a blurry line.
It's going to come back up today, I promise.
Yeah,
it's going to come back up.
He doesn't really kill, but he doesn't care if you die. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting conversation between the two of them. They're both maybe in the wrong in some instances and both in the right in some instances. So it's interesting to see kind of their tactics kind of bash heads there. Maybe some of my...
You think he's justified at some points? You think some people need to be put down for good? This is an interesting moral debate in general when it comes to superheroes. We tackled it before on the show. But you think that sometimes the Punisher's methods are necessary?
Possibly. In some scenarios, it gets real tough to determine, like, when is that necessary and who has the right to determine when it is necessary. Should just one person be able to go do that on his own outside of the law and all that?
I think it's hard to disagree with him when it comes to somebody like Kingpin because of the amount of suffering that Kingpin causes on a massive scale and the amount of invulnerability he seems to have from the legal system. He's out and out and out, and he's the villain every season. So it gets hard to justify that from the moral perspective, I think, after a long enough period of time.
Especially when we have Daredevil throwing people off roofs. They're breaking their backs. They're probably paralyzed for the rest of their life, if not dying in the hospital later if they get to the hospital.
Street-level goons.
Yeah. So
they're just trying to see their family.
That Wilson's still walking around. It's a little blurry there, I think my biggest holdup with this season is there's a lot of villains kind of going on in this season. There's storylines. That's what I was thinking. We have the Wilson Fisk stuff. We have the Punisher stuff. We have Elektra come in, who's a new character that we meet this season, which has some pretty cool parts. We have the Hand that's kind of operating in the shadows, and then there's this big giant hole and ninjas coming and chasing them, and it becomes a lot. It becomes murky. When I'm thinking back to the 3 seasons, it's not as focused. And sometimes that's okay. And I think they did a decent job balancing all the storylines. But I think thinking back on it, it's kind of hard to remember what was happening.
Yeah, I think
it's harder to follow.
You perfectly stated what I would say is my biggest complaint of the show in this season as well. My overall thoughts of the season, again, I would agree that it's my least favorite of the 3 seasons. I think the first half of the season is super, super strong, or at least the first 4 episodes that focus on the Punisher arc. And then the second half of the season, it really starts to lose me. Because I was watching the first half of Daredevil season 2 thinking, why did I ever think this was less good? This is just as good, if not better than season 1. The introduction of the Punisher, his methodology, his ideology, the performance as Frank Castle from John Bernthal, that he's putting every ounce of the comic book Punisher into it. He's brutal, he's unforgiving, he's stoic, and he only speaks when he really feels like something needs to be said. It's so good. And the ideology battle between him and Daredevil is fantastic. They've upped the game because I think they increased their budget. It visibly looks like they have cooler locations. We'll talk about that when we come to production. More memorable locations, more variety. So it seems like a better season of television in the first 4 episodes. But I feel like they knew they couldn't do the Punisher as a villain all season. They couldn't have him and Matt go head to head and tie, or one person loses and plot let the other one survive over and over again because it would get too repetitive. So they had to have Punisher's arc kind of his arc closes in a way and then reopens because he gets arrested, he goes to prison, and then he finds out there's more to the cause of his family's death and has to further that investigation. So it continues further into the season, but he gets benched for a little bit, and that I feel like is where the season loses steam. They open up with the Elektra stuff, which the first Elektra episode is really, really strong. I really love the flashbacks, the locations, awesome giant mansions, awesome. Where's the other place that they go? They go to Fogwell's gym. So that episode is really, really. Oh, the college party too. Great locations. Like I said, big budget. So I love that episode, and the tension, the sexual tension, chemistry between him and Elektra is palpable, and that episode's great. But then I feel like they didn't know where to go after that. They got a little bit too comic-y introducing the Hand. Seeing these ninjas running around New York, I think, was a little bit much for me, a little bit too campy in this show. I don't think campy is necessarily bad, but with the tone they set in the first season, I just didn't fit for me. Seeing them wearing sandals and full ninja garb, like running from rooftops and shooting bow and arrows at a car as the car's trying to drive away. It felt like too much for me with the introduction of the Hand. Bringing Nobu back from the dead seemed a little bit out of the realm of reality for the kind of show that they set up in the first season.
I think at that point, that's where you have to like zoom out and see like what world this is in, because yes,
well, they did it for that. They did it for Defenders. They did it to
it's also, if you guys remember, it's attached to the MCU. Like it was a part of canon, and it is now officially like still canon with Disney moving forward with it. So I think if you kind of zoom out and you think of it like that, like maybe it fits a little bit better, but in the confinement of just Daredevil seasons, it does kind of stick out a little bit.
Yeah, because the other two seasons are more grounded.
Yeah, it's not my favorite part of this season, that's for sure.
Because is like superhuman, but in this brilliant way where you buy into it as the real world concept. He's just phenomenally gifted.
Yeah.
I think that the second half of the season, like I said, totally kind of unravels, and I started to remember why it's not as good. Because one thing, like you said about too many storylines, is Matt is constantly getting pulled away from where I want him to be in the story. After Frank gets captured, he gets defended by Nelson and Murdoch and Paige. She's their associate at that time. But they're defending him, and I want Matt to be in the same room as Frank because it's so good. The first thing he says when Matt wakes up Frank in the hospital bed, he's like, "I'm Matt Murdoch," and Frank says, "I know who you are." And it's like, does he know who he is? Does he mean he's heard of Matt Murdoch, or does he know he's Daredevil?
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time listening to his voice, and he's a very intelligent, aware individual. And so that tension's amazing. And then boom, he's pulled away by Elektra so many times in a storyline that, frankly, I'm not too interested as they get into the Hand stuff. I like I said, their chemistry is great, but the Hand story doesn't interest me. I love Stick. But even with those great characters, Stick, Elektra, and Daredevil, the Hand story wasn't working for me. And so I keep seeing him he should be in court, but Foggy and Karen are defending him alone, and Matt is only there for one part, and he screws up his part because Frank is being like blackmailed into just chucking the case in the garbage, so he doesn't even get to perform in court as Matt Murdoch. So it just seemed like a big loss for the season to have him pulled in two directions, and to be in the plotline that I didn't want him to be in instead, when I wanted so much more attention on, because like I said, so well cast, so phenomenal. Every second Frank Castle's on screen, I want more. It's like they're giving us this little tap, and I just want him to put it on full blast. And I'm so glad we got seasons of Punisher because it's so good, and especially in the first season. But I just think that those storylines were a little bit too much. And like you said, introducing the Kingpin too, I like that he's in every season, but that's a lot of villains, a lot of storylines. And those are some of the best parts, honestly, like the Frank Castle and Kingpin going back and forth with each other in the prison is amazing. And we just spend a whole crapload of time with the Elektra storylines. And it is
nice that Kingpin isn't the sole focus, though, because that can get tired.
Yeah.
And that can also feel like, okay, like we're not making any traction here, like that's one of your complaints about The Boys specifically, like
Homelander nothing happens.
Yeah, like he's always in the same position by the end of the season, and then going into the next season.
It took this many seasons for him to get like into a more aggressive position, really.
Yeah.
This just happened at the end of the last season.
I can appreciate that they're like throwing other obstacles for Matt Murdoch and Daredevil to kind of tackle. I think with the Hand stuff, that's where we see the difficulty of kind of converting a comic over onto the screen. Like there's things that you got to pick and choose from, and I think the Hand is a decent part of the comics. So of course they're going to want to try to bring that over into the show because it's like a core moment of Daredevil's development and character and conflicts that he faces. But some things just work better in the comics than they do in a
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and also a lot of times comics too, they have different like runs, where it's like, all right, this run's focused on this. Boom. Now we're new run, new author, new artist,
It's related from
Yeah, and it's over here. So like we're trying to kind of piece all of this together to make a new cohesive story. That's not always the case, but I feel like that's kind of how it is for Daredevil here.
So we're talking about the hand. Have you heard about how Daredevil's connected to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
I have. I saw a TikTok of Charlie Cox talking about it just this last week.
Just for the audience, if you haven't heard, I think a lot of people have, but the chemicals that blinded Matt Murdock and gave him his powers also supposedly seeped into a nearby sewer grate, touched turtles, and gave the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles their powers as well. And then they're also pay homage, obviously, with Daredevil has the hand to fight this organization of ninjas, and the TMNT, they have the foot, which is this organization of ninjas. So really funny connections.
Both have stick.
Yeah, they both have stick. I think that's really, really funny. It just seems like two universes have no reason to be connected, but they are.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go into. We talked about it a little bit, but let's talk about some of our favorite moments in the season into that next section. It's kind of the waters are blurred in those first two categories. We talked about some of them. But you mentioned these fight scenes, and I think that what they did with the hallway fight scene in this season, the Daredevil hallway fight season, they won up to the last season, in my opinion. I know that it's shocking and there's this nostalgia to the first season's hallway fight scene and it's this great oneer, but in season 2 it's not even just a hallway fight scene, it's a rooftop to hallway to staircase fight scene.
I'm trying to remember this one. He's wearing the red suit at this point, right? Does he have like something handcuffed to his hand?
So the Punisher taped a gun to his hand,
yes,
and brought Elliot Grote up to the roof and told him he killed an old lady. You either have to shoot me or I'm going to kill him. So either way, somebody dies. I'm trying to put him in an impossible situation. Daredevil breaks out of the chains and tackles Punisher, not before he shoots Grote. But then with Punisher knocked out, Punisher enacted this plan to like blow up the bikers across the street bikes. They're called like the Dogs of Hell or something. And they're all rushing into the building to attack whoever did that. So Daredevil's got to put Punisher up on his shoulder, try to take him out of there so he can save his life, but also stop all the bikers. And there's this awesome sequence where he gets in the elevator and he's about to get away, and the bikers are running down the hall. But just before the elevator closes, he sees the old man from earlier in the episode come out of his door, the veteran. And Daredevil smacks his hand on the elevator door, pushes it open, and he's like, oh. He's like, I'm gonna have to protect this guy, and he's got the chain in one hand because he was chained up by the Punisher before he broke out, and the gun duct taped to his other hand. And this fight scene is so involved. It's way more complicated than the fight scene in the first season. They like drop the camera downstairs, and the shot continues. Like there is hidden cuts, and I've done a video breaking down the hidden cuts.
I tried to pull it up, but the screen record is picking the wrong screen. So let me see if I can change that real quick. So, all right, we're back. So we're going to take a look at this kind of fight scene as we're talking about it here. This is the hallway scene that Andrew was just bringing up.
And just as that guy comes out of his apartment, Daredevil realizes he has to save him. So there's so many complicated constraints to this scene to make it more badass. Downside to it is he's still wearing the suit I don't like. This is before he gets the new season 2 suit with the hexagon ears right now. But he's got one hand completely duct taped to the gun, so he can't even let go of it. And he's got a chain in the other hand that makes this choreography so cool and unique, where Daredevil has a lot more options in this fight. I mean, his one hand is limited, but his other hand with the chain, he can do a lot of really cool moves. They had to put some hidden cuts in this one. It just had to be done because the choreography is so ambitious and complicated.
Yeah,
so menacing.
They're switching between the actor and the stunt double. It is cool too how they're like cutting out the lights to where, like, especially in that beginning part where he's like backlit, so it kind of even hides it even more, makes it more. It feels kind of more mysterious, like he is the devil in the night.
Yeah.
Like right here, like the brightest part of the image is behind the subjects, so you kind of almost just see a silhouette.
These punches are sick.
Yeah, they're stacking them really well. So obviously he's not making contact there. So they're just kind of angling the camera at the right spot. The tricky part is that the camera's moving. So everyone's timing has to be just right. Otherwise, you're going to see the space between his hand and the head, and you're going to see that it doesn't land.
And it's not just the timing and positioning of the stunt actors, but the cameraman.
Yeah.
This
right
is
here, they
incredible.
transitioned into this like kind of pulley system that's going down and around the
Somebody
stairs. Like,
picks it up right there. It's a lot of planning. Incredible amount of time must have gone into organizing this.
there's one cut right there. That was like the first like visible one. That was really cool. Andrew talks about this moment all the time, how he reacts without even looking because he can see in a 360 view since he's using his kind of radar sense rather than just vision. Really cool acrobatics. Again, just a lot of people. They all have weapons. Again, he's kind of limited with his hand. I'm sure he's also trying really hard not to pull the trigger. Like that's got to be hard too.
Well, the gun's empty now.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. He only gave him one bullet.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the scene, he points it at them and he clicks it and dry fires it.
Got it.
And then he laughs. We just don't have audio.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this fight, insane and amazing and long as it is only preceding a whole nother fight. Because once he goes through this door, he fights the 3 big goons. Or I think it's actually 4, because I think a 4th one comes in after the fact when he starts winning. So he is putting on the athletic performance of the decade right now. Daredevil is literally doing an ultra marathon of fighting right now.
It is what was I going to say
here?
If you look at like the actors in the background who have already taken a beating, they do a good job at like acting like they're recovering,
trying to get back
from that beating to try to come back, rather than in like that Star Wars Red Room scene where they're just kind of in and like they're throwing air punches or whatever just to act busy. They do a good job of choreographing what the characters should be doing, even when they're not involved into the fight. So it all looks like real, The
way he drops the chain before he comes at this guy I was right. There's a 4th one. It's just so like nonchalant. He's like, he's like, guess I gotta fight.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is a long fight. I think this clip is like 5 minutes long just on its own.
It's incredible. I mean, the more I look at the fight closely, the more I think it might be my favorite fight of the 3 seasons.
That's crazy because we even looked at the bullseye fight in a previous episode not too long ago. I think we were doing like a trailer reaction to Born Again, and we were comparing Born Again's trailer to season 1's trailer, and then we pulled up that fight, and when we were watching that, we're like, man, this fight is freaking phenomenal. The tension is fantastic.
And there's 2 Punisher versus Daredevil fights before this that are really good in episodes 1 through 3.
Yeah,
man. And the rooftop scene that precedes that, the conversation between him and the Punisher has some of the best lines in all of Daredevil, and such just great television between these 2 characters. Such amazing writing where they're arguing, and Punisher says, "What do? You run around this city like it's your playground. You hit them, they get back up. I hit them, they stay down." And Daredevil says, "What do? You run around like it's your shooting gallery. You just put people in the morgue, Frank." And he's like calling into question his ideology. He says, "Do you ever think that maybe for a second that you're wrong, that that some people deserve a second chance, that maybe they're a terrible person, but there's one small piece of goodness in them that maybe they could have changed, and you snuff that out forever, And a lot of those questions that on the surface level we ignore and say, "Oh man, Punisher's a badass," they do a great job of calling into question in this season. There's a moment later in court where a kid stands up and he's like, "I don't care what happened to you. You killed my dad. You killed my dad." And it's hard on every one of the characters to hear, like Karen and even the Punisher is kind of teary-eyed about it later when Karen's sitting with him talking. I mean, it's brutal. He's killing people, putting them down like animals, and he calls it that straight up.
Yeah.
So I like how they talk about like the moral relativity of the difference between the 2 characters. And I mean, Daredevil's not always in the right either.
No,
but that's another one of my favorite moments. Talked about it already. The conversation on the rooftop between the 2 of them, where Daredevil's chained up. What are some of our other favorite moments from the season? I think that I'm not a big fan of the fight at the end of the season, the Nobu Daredevil Elektra fight at the end, but I did want to talk about briefly how Nobu, I think, is the most skilled combatant in the Daredevil trilogy. He gives Daredevil the work. He beats the shit out of Daredevil multiple occasions. I feel like in season 1, Daredevil kind of wins on luck. He slices him to pieces. Even in season 2, when Elektra's asking him about the scars on his body, he says like 3 of them are attributed to Nobu from that fight in the warehouse. He's got big gashes along his chest, stomach, and back from the swinging blades that Nobu uses. So he's got reminders of how much Nobu has whooped his ass in the past. And Nobu, in the fight on the rooftop after being reincarnated, is beating the crap out of Daredevil and beating the crap out of Elektra at the same time. He's taking the 2v1 and he's just throwing up blocks, hitting them both. He's fighting 2 of the most skilled fighters in specifically the Daredevil universe and coming out on top. It's crazy. Like, he's incredibly skilled fighter. Yeah, after dying and coming back. Not even prime Nobu, probably. Reincarnated Nobu. But he was beating the shit out of him in the warehouse too, and he only won because that spark ignited the gas on the floor, which if you say that's part of Matt's plan, you're admitting Matt's a murderer. If you say it was on accident, then Matt won by luck. So if you want to maintain his moral high ground, then I'm saying Nobu only lost by luck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
hey, sometimes you need a little bit of luck, you know?
But who else is fighting on that level? I mean, Daredevil's one of the most skilled hand-to-hand combatants in the Marvel Universe, and Nobu's clapping him.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Daredevil does get his butt whooped quite a bit. He's kind of like invincible in that way, you know. He's really powerful, but he ends up taking a beating quite often. Partially, I feel like it's because he's fighting so many people at once.
Yeah.
But whenever he's one-on-one with people, he's normally pretty level with them. Kingpin does work him up.
Yeah.
In season 3.
Huge. He's like,
yeah,
he's huge. He's like 400 pounds.
Yeah.
But I probably in like comic lore. Yeah. But I think that one thing that's also crazy, I wanted not to forget about this fight, is when Daredevil finally wins the rooftop fight with Nobu, he lassos him basically with the billy club, flips over him, and launches him off the roof. I feel like Daredevil is basically intending to murder him right there. I don't know how you can argue your way out of that, Tin Can.
He survived fire.
So Nobu survives that, which is mind-blowing. When he
survives the roof?
Yeah, when he wakes up on the street, I looked this up to confirm. Yeah, he wakes up, comes back to life on the pavement. We can see that he was thrown from at least 3 stories because the building that's right next to him in the background is 3 stories. The building on the left that I think he got thrown off of looks maybe even a little higher. So 3 stories, what? Probably 36 feet at least. That's an incredible distance to fall. Definitely could have died, especially depending on how he landed. Looks like he landed on his back. So definitely could have been paralyzed or died. And somehow Daredevil gets off scot-free on this just because the writers decided he didn't die. And then, like Zach was talking about, shout out to Zach, who was on our last episode that we talked about Daredevil season 1 recap and review. Stick stabs him and then cuts his head off. And this is another, like what Zach was talking about, the convenience factors of the plot, where these characters get removed to where they're not going to come back and be a problem again, but without Daredevil having to pull the trigger himself. It's like, dude, you threw him off a 3-story rooftop. Like, you seemed like you didn't care if he lived or died.
That's up to fate.
That's
to decide. Yeah.
He's Daredevil.
That's right.
Let God decide. If I throw him off of a 10-story building, you know,
no, that's on him.
He'll land on an awning like John Wick.
Just spread all your limbs like a cat would to slow down your fall.
Yeah, you got, and then you got.
They're not skilled. If they're not skilled enough to know that, then that's on them.
Nobody's pretty skilled, but I don't know if he's skilled enough to survive a 5-story drop off a roof. Apparently, the writers decided he is.
What's the next category that you wanted to talk about? Was it production, or did you have one more before that?
No, it was production and cinematography, like back to back.
All right, what do you got?
I want to talk about production in this season because, like I said, I think they stepped up the game in terms of their shooting locations. I think they stepped up the game in terms of their costuming, because Daredevil gets cracked in the head, shot in the forehead by Punisher, which they say is a very well-placed warning shot, that he knew that that's where the armor would protect him the best and just wanted to donk him.
Or that's just where he's used to shooting people, so it's habit.
This is what the show seems to want you to believe, though.
Yeah.
Because Melvin says, or maybe it was a warning. But so because the suit's damaged, he asked Melvin Potter to make him a new suit. Melvin makes him this kick-ass new Daredevil suit. It's more vibrant with the red. It's got this mesh over his ears where the helmet curves over the top of his ear instead of covering his ears, which makes a lot more sense for Daredevil. And the mesh doesn't disturb his ability to hear sound, so he doesn't have to have those weird hexagons with the slits in them to let the sound in, which seems like
Andrew
fucking his
really
ability.
hates those hexagons.
It's like Batman nipples. It should be iconically bad.
It's not that bad.
But he gets the new suit, super badass. He looks great. The production design for the Punisher is amazing. They have him in the trench coat by the end of the scene. Midway through, he's got the white jumpsuit that the newbies in prison wear, covered in blood that form the skull on his chest. But what I'm really impressed with is the locations. I think his name is Sweeney. No, maybe Sweeney's the other guy. But the mob boss who's responsible for Daredevil's dad's death, they go to his house, and it's like this awesome mansion. It's got a beautiful kitchen, awesome exterior.
Punisher's dad's death?
Oh, Daredevil's dad's death. I said Punisher?
Oh, no. Okay,
Daredevil's dad's death. So I thought it was Roscoe Sweeney. I might be right. I'm not sure. But the mansion looks amazing. Where he meets Elektra is like this college fundraiser because they go to Columbia, and it's this really beautiful, stunning like ballroom. They have awesome corporate locations. Like they go to this company that is tied up with the Hand, and that has a big party with awesome locations. They have a bathroom in there. They go to the bathroom. They go to board meetings. They walk down long hallways. They have this awesome office with a secret hidden wall that's got all these documents and stuff in it. So the locations, I think, were stepped up a notch. They still do like the dark, gritty locations. The warehouse is where that giant hole that you mentioned earlier was, and the Hand locations are in these dirty warehouses. But the expensive locations, I feel like, really have this season stick out in my memory visually. And despite the fact that season 1 locations are incredibly well done, I think by making these unique locations in season 2, they're more memorable. One of the first things in the season is Daredevil hunting down these 3 bad guys that committed armed robbery, and the last one, there's a kitchen location, which is really cool, but the very last one gets caught in a church, fittingly for Daredevil, and has this beautiful mosaic background, a bunch of lit candles, wooden pews, and it's like nestled in this little street in New York, but the interior of that little church is so memorable, so pretty visually, and so well shot. And then the day he goes on with Karen Page, they go to this restaurant. I don't know what kind of food it is, but the roof of the restaurant, I don't know if you remember this, is covered with, like, she says it's covered with 1,000,000 lights. It's got all these little chili pepper lights, and they're all varied colors. So it makes for these really cool, beautiful shots with a whole range of lights and colors. And I feel like that date location is so memorable because they picked this really cool spot with a lot of interesting lights. So across the whole season, there seems like there's harder to shoot locations, more expensive locations. I feel like it really pays off because I can picture them in my mind and makes it iconic and memorable.
Yeah, and it's also before the use of like heavier reliant on the volume shooting, which is those LED walls and panel backgrounds and stuff. So for a lot of their locations, they're actually on set. I'm sure they built some sets and stuff. Yeah, I remember that. They built some sets and stuff or whatnot, but for the most part, it really does feel like they're in these spots and these locations and stuff. So I'm hoping that's something that we feel going forward in Born Again, because Disney loves using their volume. And it's cool. It's got great usage, versatility, like you can do really cool stuff. The Batman used it, I think, probably the best out of anything. Also Mandalorian season 1, but it has its like limitations, and
it should be used the way the Batman used it, which is when it's appropriate, not constantly.
Yeah, the Batman used it like with insert shots, like of the car chase where he's chasing Penguin,
or on the rooftop high-rise scenes where they could, really model and develop their own vision of what Gotham City would look like.
Right. But yeah, so hopefully we get that feeling where they're going to like these real places, or at least these real sets where it feels like they're in the city like it does in these original shows.
I really hope so, because this season, the visual production elements were such a highlight to me in both seasons. I loved the lighting in the first season. I loved the grittiness of the location. Matt's apartment's amazing. The prison, or not the prison, the precinct, the police precinct, the interrogation rooms, and the bowling alley, even, like, they're real places. And then when they're out on the streets in both seasons, they seem to be shooting on real streets in a lot, if not most of the time. These streets and alleyways look like real locations, there's a lot of extras in the background that make the world feel full and real, like actual New York in the daytime. And then the dockside locations, I think, are real docks too, from what I can tell. I mean, I'm like scrutinizing them, and if they're not real dock locations, they're very well, hidden with green screen and CGI, because it looks incredible. I mean, maybe parts of the background are changed or enhanced with special effects, but it looks like the water that's close to them is real water, because water is one of the hardest things to fake. We talked about that before with Avatar movies. I want to talk about the cinematography a little bit. It's basically just going to be echoing everything I said from season 1. I like the creative choices with the lighting. I like the greens. I like the yellows. I think it makes it feel grungy and gritty, because Hell's Kitchen is described in their world as like this poor economic area of New York that has a lot of struggling citizens, and I feel like it fits the tone and aesthetic of the world. But then we get a lot of more brightly lit locations, a lot more like colder, whiter lighting in these more affluent and rich locations that are in the season, like boardrooms, and it's in season 1 too. A lot of the Kingpin-esque areas that are his like apartment, it's not lit with orange. It's the beautiful New York skyline in the background. Clean. Yeah, clean. And they do that a lot more in the season, because there's maybe more of the wealthy locations with the stuff with the corporations and the hand, and they're in the Oh, and that's another 2 great production locations that they have are the courtroom looks great for the Punisher, and the prison looks great for the Punisher. The prison scenes are awesome. The workout area for Kingpin, it's just cleared for just him. And dude, he had, I think, 405 that he was repping on bench press. I'm trying to remember it was either 405 or 495. And he was repping it out on bench press. I was like, God damn.
Yeah, 405 would be 4 of the plates, and then
495
5
plates on each side.
Plates.
Dude, he's a tank. No wonder he's smacking Daredevil and Punisher around.
My favorite part about the cinematography is the camera movement, especially in the fights. They're really like they're choreographing the camera, and the camera team that's helping operate and move the lens in within the fight. Like it's a dance between the actor, the stunt coordinators, and stunt doubles, and then the camera team as well, and then that's partially why I'd imagine that they try to cut off all the lights in those big scenes, because it's really hard to light a scene from every angle all at once, because the camera in one take is shooting this direction and then it's shooting this direction in the next second, and to keep the lighting consistent, you got to rely on lighting the scene with natural light for probably 90% of it, if not even all of it. That way you're not seeing like a light stand in the middle of the fight and stuff like that. So all of that goes into the camera work is something that I really appreciate in the show. And even there's good camera movement during dialogue scenes and the courthouse and all of that stuff. So the camera operation is where the cinematography really sticks out for me.
I like the way that they photograph some really unique shots. Like I love that dating scene with Matt and Karen Page that I was just showing you. I was showing you a GIF on my phone, and they almost shoot some of the shots in the season like an A24 style, really unique framing. Like they've got Matt and Karen justified in the bottom right, half their face cut off, and they're really highlighting the location in that scene. They're really putting your eyes on the lights in the background. And then there's this really cool shot where him and Karen Page have their first kiss, where it follows a raindrop as it falls down onto Karen's arm and then watches it run down her arm. And it's kind of highlighting Matt's increased sensory perceptive abilities. It's showing you what it would be like to perceive just a single raindrop, because and it really quiets down the scene and you can hear their breathing at a really high level. So those production elements, the sound design, the visual components really put you in Matt's shoes and makes this kind of palpable, sexual tension between them all the more strong and noticeable, because you can imagine that Matt is feeling everything at a heightened level, because his sensory abilities are so strong. So I think one thing the show does a great job of is putting you in his shoes. When he loses his hearing after he gets the concussion from Punisher shooting him in the head, they suck all the sound out of the scene. And then there's just a ringing, and Matt's panicking and freaking out because without sound, he's blind. He can't see. And that's like his predominant way of navigating the world. So that glass shatters in slow motion, and then he backs up against the wall and like lowers himself down. He's panic breathing, and you're just hearing the ringing that he's hearing. So just like we talked about the compliment in the first season, they do a good job of putting you in the shoes of the character with those elements by using sound to tell you what's going on, instead of Matt going, "Oh my God, I can't hear." Which, why would he say that? Because he wouldn't even be able to hear it at the time.
What's the next element that you wanted to touch on?
I think after cinematography, it was just talking about
Born Again?
Daredevil Born Again. I can wrap that up pretty quick. Like I said in the last time, I made a TikTok, I think, saying this, that I get more and more nervous with each passing episode of Daredevil that I watch that Born Again won't be able to live up to it. But it's got a lot of the same cast members coming back that I love. I think they do so amazing in their roles. I can't give them enough props. So I'm excited to watch it and see what they bring.
Yeah, I feel like whenever we have high expectations for something, we end up falling short, whether that is because it actually did fall short or if it's because our expectations were just too high that it didn't meet them. So I feel like I'm trying to hold back that negative thought of like, oh, this is probably isn't going to be as good, just so I can absorb and enjoy what they give me and make a decision on whether or not it's good based off of the season rather than just based off of what I want it to be because of what I've seen. And that's hard to do, and I know you're not going to do that at all.
I just don't know how they're going to give me one batch, two batch, penny and dime. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to give me. You hit them and they get back up. I hit them and they stay down. Like, I don't know that they can deliver on what these seasons of Netflix's Daredevil delivered on. They've. Oh, and I mentioned the ratings earlier too, and I kind of skipped those, so I can go on IMDb and tell you guys how this performed.
The trailer for Born Again does look good, and it does feel like it has the same tone and the character moments that we're looking for. But they put together good trailers, like Disney knows how to put a trailer together to get people interested in it. So we'll see kind of how the show actually is. It's coming out March 4th, I believe. So that's in a few more weeks. Again, this was season 2. So next week we're going to talk about season 3. And then I'm pretty sure, boom, there we are. We're having the newest season of Daredevil come out. So we timed this perfectly. Like we take this podcast stuff very seriously. Our audio might not sound great right now, but
we're getting it figured out.
We're working on it.
The average rating of the episodes fluctuates between an 8 to a 9. The first episode's at 8.8. Second episode's 8.6. These next 2 episodes, heavy Punisher episodes. Talked about how Penny and Dime is one of my favorites, and New York Finest has that rooftop conversation and the long wonder that we talked about. 3 is called New York's Finest. It's 9.3. 4 is Penny and Dime. That's also a 9.3. And then we noticed it start to dip a little bit, like I talked about how I didn't like it as much after there. 8.0, 8.3, 8.3, 8.5. Then back up to a 9.3, down to an 8.5, 8.5, 8.5, and finally ending with an 8.7. So that's still incredible scores. Yeah. Nothing below an 8 the whole season.
I do want to say, when we're like talking about how this is like our least favorite season, it's not as good as the others. By no means are we saying that the season's bad.
It's one of the top tier seasons.
Yeah, it's better than most seasons of shows that I've seen. It's up there. I think it's on like a similar level to the other 2 seasons. We just prefer those ones a little bit more.
The worst reasons that we already is better than most. The worst episode of Daredevil is better than most episodes of the other show.
Exactly. I totally agree. So I feel like this covers everything we wanted to talk about and touch on for season 2. Again, we did a really deep dive into season 1. If you haven't already checked that out, go check that out. It's almost like 2 hours long. Don't let that scare you. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, we loved it.
We kind of broke down each episode a little bit further than we did today, and we really talked about the story and the different elements of the characters and stuff. We had Zach on the show for that one. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you go check that out.
If 2 hours scares you, you're not a big enough Daredevil fan.
Yeah, I mean, you already made it this far. We're probably 40, 50 minutes into this one. So, I mean, what's a little bit more talking, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then next week, we're going to be putting out season 3 like we've been talking and hinting to this whole time. Season 3 might be my favorite season. It might. I go back and forth. It's got some Bullseye is so cool.
I'm gonna decide when I'm gonna watch it.
And then that fight with Kingpin at the end.
Oh, the delivery, the dialogue, the performance from Charlie Cox in that final.
We get back your black suit that you love so much, but I think we have an even cooler addition with the ropes on his knuckles. I think that looks badass.
Damn, what I do in the dark.
And we get a bunch of training montages in this one since he's coming back from injury after having that building fall on him and the defenders. And there's a lot of like conflict again within him, and if what he's doing is right and wrong, and kind of his religion comes back into play. So it's really, there's a lot of like cool dynamics and hurdles that he has to get over, but it's not necessarily because of all these different storylines coming into play.
Yeah.
It's internal conflict, it's conflict with Karen, it's conflict with just the things around him already. And then, of course, we get Bullseye. Bullseye puts on the Daredevil suit, and I think he looks fantastic in it. Seeing him fight Daredevil in that scene that we talked about earlier, where he's throwing things in that office, so cool. So I'm excited to talk about season 3.
The Agent Poindexter grin is top tier.
Yeah,
and when he's got the suit on,
he's coming back for Born Again. He's coming back.
Yeah, that's another great returning cast member too.
Yeah.
It's perfect for his role.
Hopefully they balance all these storylines well, because they got the Punisher, Kingpin, Muse, which is a new character that we haven't seen yet, right? And then Bullseye. So there's a lot of moving pieces already.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many episodes the season is. Are you?
No, I'm not sure either.
I wonder if that's out yet. I'm sure we can pull it up here, since we have the world at our fingertips. Let's see who can kind of get it first here.
9 episodes of Daredevil Born Again.
Okay.
Originally planned for 18 episodes, according to Games Radar.
I feel like before, like 2 years ago or something, it was originally like scheduled for like 22 episodes or 23 episodes, and then it got retooled and reshot, and we're back down to 9, I guess.
Just make a movie.
Yeah, right. I think 9 to 13 is a good realm, we don't want too much dead space in there, we want it to be moving, but at the same time, it is hard to get only 8 episodes and then we have to wait another 2 years for a new season. But I'm pretty sure season 2 has already been cleared and they're going to start shooting that this year sometime.
Yeah, it says that we're going to do 18, but then they split it into 2 seasons, so they probably automatically confirmed it for 2 seasons.
Yeah, I know it's confirmed for season 2. I know that for sure. So that's already a good sign that they like it enough to keep it going, and they're not worried about how it's going to be perceived. They think it's a strong enough IP and character and story that they're going to continue.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best things that Marvel has going for them, in my eyes. I'm obviously a big Daredevil fan.
Yeah, I mean, like, he carried 2 of the shows, I think, that they were talking. I think that's one of the reasons why so many people tuned into She-Hulk and Echo, like, Daredevil's going to be in there, and we have been craving more Daredevil in the content since we didn't really get to see him for 4 or 5 years. So, yeah, what did you guys think of season 2? Where does it stack up in your rankings for the Daredevil seasons? What's your excitement level for Born Again? Let us know in the comments. If you want to talk with us further about Daredevil or other movies that you're enjoying or TV shows that you're watching right now, be sure to check out our Discord. It's linked in the description in the bio there. We talk about movies and TV shows like we do here on the podcast, but we really dive in with our small community that we're starting to build on there. We do different movie polls and ranking lists and debates, kind of going back and forth of why we like this, why we didn't like this for a particular movie or show. So there's a lot going on the Discord. Someone's always talking and having a conversation in there. We have a bunch of different tabs for conversations to get started.
Aaron fan club, Andrew fan club.
Boom. That's where you get to see the shirtless photos, which is a fan favorite, for both of us. Andrew's got the tats and I'm clean skinned. So we got a little bit of for everyone.
So you can be careful with your phrasing.
But it is going to cost you, because we're putting out quality content on there, and the interaction's a lot of fun. So you got to pay the price. Andrew, tell them how much it is.
Never do it for free.
That's right. With that said,
nowadays it is absolutely free.
Yeah, it's totally free. Just click on the link in the description and we'll get you in there. If it doesn't work for whatever reason because it expires after a week, or sometimes I don't update it, then just send us a message on the description of this video and we'll send you the updated link and get you in the Discord if that's something that you want. Again, we post new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Be sure to hit that subscription button and notification bell so you don't miss any of our other content. We're coming up to 300 episodes here. We're cruising along with this podcast. Andrew, where else are we?
Make sure to check us out on our social media platforms. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X. We are all over the map. Make sure to follow us on there, and make sure to share us with friends and family, because that's the best way to help the show grow organically. Absolutely. Go out on the street, take a sign, backseat directing, wave it around, do a dance, do some sign tricks on the side.
Take your friends and family's phones, go onto their YouTube app, hit subscribe, boom. They won't even know.
Keep guessing their password. If they get locked out, it's okay. Keep guessing.
Yeah.
You can factory reset it. They'll be fine.
Exactly. All right, thanks so much for watching, and
That's a wrap.